Thank you so much for taking out time, Harita, Umesh, and Leon. We are fundamentally here today to really discuss our potential possibilities and how collaboration today has such deeper meanings with the world really becoming a smaller place. COVID has really made us intercept our views about how we participate with the world and we bring in our best so that the world becomes a better place. So that's the reason I kept the title of the conversation e-collaboration. Obviously, it means different things for all of us. Love to hear your thoughts on it. Harita, I know you lead one of the world's largest collaborative software technology firms and taking a really larger impact on how you are making impacts on your clients, not only in India, but all over the world. Umesh, you've consistently worked with governments across the world and consistently made state-led commercialization reality. We work very closely on some of the state-led partnerships with governments across either Middle East, Africa, Southeast Asia. So it will be lovely to take your opinion on what collaboration today means. Earlier, it was very privately held, but today, how can we bring out that collaboration? And Leon, I want to take your views on how the culture of collaboration and expectation from both sides has changed, keeping in mind how people are today expecting collaboration to really partner and what are the levels and benchmarks globally we are seeing to build value and what have been the impacts on collaboration to it because like I said earlier impose and imposer can really mean some aspects of build story. So we'll start with you, Harita. Maybe you can give some perspective on what collaboration has meant for you personally as well as professionally, and what you are doing to really make a world sink in together and drive excellence across various geographies and capacities.
Sure. Thank you. Thank you, Pranab. And, if I look at collaboration, it's always been there, whether it was face to face, whether it was virtual. And over the last 2 years, the definition has changed. As we said, it's e collaboration. And, looking back on the last year and a half, I would say there are three perspectives to collaboration. Definitely the people perspective. Having moved to, work at home, one
Yeah.
has to understand and appreciate uh, people's individuals' likes, dislikes, timelines, ability at home to collaborate. Do I have the right equipment, the right infrastructure, the right space to be able to even collaborate? And so that was very important for us to understand. Every program that we deliver in Sutherland, what does collaboration mean internally, for the consultant, for the team manager, for the account manager, for the client partner, and then for the customer. The second perspective, the easy one to handle is definitely technology. So, you could make choices that we will collaborate using a simple platform like WhatsApp, and you can collaborate using WhatsApp, or you would do it using a Cisco WebEx, or you would do it using Microsoft Teams. So, obviously, we made technology choices. And finally, I think the most important thing was what is the role of robust processes when you collaborate.
Yeah.
And as we go along, I'd love to talk a little bit more on the process piece, but I'll hold that for now, Pranav.
Yeah, no, I want to pick that up for what you just said. I think one of the key ingredients about making a decision of what the choice of collaboration is starting with the value curve of starting build. And I think that has become more evident today with not only large startups or startups which were much younger a decade back, also achieving some kind of respect and authority, but they're still startups of nature because they've not become the behemoth of the Cisco's of the world or the other large brands of the world. But the potential of them really being there to support the parallel play of your choice has made the customer far more augmented to realize that the world and the decisions are not anymore led to high-end boardroom discussions in some ways or the other. So, Umesh, what have you seen potentially change in the way collaboration and builds not only from startup ecosystems but also with how consumer perceives it change in your visibility?
It's interesting. I mean, the way the world is moving, and from the technology, I guess all of us have seen the evolution of different kind of technologies. So in my lifetime, at least, I guess what is left is now is a teleportation left, on the telecom side. Um, that's the reality. I think we have seen every technology happening in front of our eyes. When it comes to collaboration, this is an adage. I don't know if that holds true, but I still believe there is more behind collaboration. At 30 years back, probably this is my view. I mean, we were less informed, more aware because we were hungry for information. Today's generation is more informed but less aware, which means they're not able to connect the dots. They simply believe the Google is the father and the Facebook is the mother. And sorry to say, that's the reality of life, actually. The endeavor of collaboration is when you are, I mean, we are on the business of finding partners and finding people. I mean, I guess more importantly, the endeavor is that whether there's a right fit and there's a right, I mean, chemistry happening around. And you have today's age all kind of research material. I mean, when 20 years back, we had few companies who had that kind of depth of information about the client, about prospects and customers. Today, the information is transnational. It is spread across all over the world, actually. So how do you narrow down that you, I mean, besides teleconference, besides the video calls, besides the WhatsApp, besides the Telegram, besides the Skype. So you have to look at the right kind of partner, and I think more importantly, you can't be overwhelmed with the amount of information which is falling on your table. So you have to narrow down your core focus and find the right kind of partner, find the right chemistry fit. You can only work probably 8 to 10 hours in a day, but that has to be very productive. So all the more critically aligning all kind of dots, align to your business and making it work. In my role, this is a constant endeavor. I say that I am a CPO, Chief Priest Officer, which means from the bride, find a groom, do a healthy marriage, and produce healthy profits and babies. But that's much beyond that, actually. You have to really look at the endeavor, what you're doing to find the right kind of partners. They produce the right results. And I guess that's where the e-collaboration is going on. Information overload, information down, but you have to find the golden grain or to find the right connect. So that's the
Super, super, super. So Harita, you were very focused on process. Umesh, you are saying about making sure that your ability to take decisions is based on plays and making sure things are augmented towards what is the purpose. Leon, I want to pick your brain on the fact that how have people perceived the transition of collaboration? Because you could still have earlier people who go to office, do their bit, not talk to people. But today, everybody and not be mapped that they are not involved in the social ecosystem structure, especially from that play. But today, I think there is a clear augmentation of that. Have you logged in, logged out? Are you doing your bit? And you are managing. So, how is collaborative ecosystems also creating a benchmark of pressure for people whose styles have traditionally not been like that? What's your views on the people side of collaboration?
Well, I'm going to take this at a two-part level because I would say before you get to the person themselves and the individual, I think we have to look at the top level of corporate culture. So if we think about the backdrop of the pandemic as itself, right? What's happened between the pandemic and all the things that have happened in the US, we've become more focused on values. So the values of the company dictate how you feel about that company. And in this particular point of the pandemic, how the company's culture then manages you as the individual, taking into your considerations how you like to work, who you are as the individual, then lends itself to how the people who have been isolated previously and said, you know what, it's not my style. I clock in, I clock out. I don't want to do small talk. I'm here to do a job. It's sufficient. But what people are realizing is that when you start to build a values led company, it creates that familial feeling, which means that ultimately people are finding themselves in the position where they're not only looking at, can I stay the same as I am, but has the company moved without me, and do I still fit in here? Because ultimately, it's not necessarily always about changing who you are to fit the company. It's sometimes about finding the company that suits you, or the company culture that suits you. And this has been the interesting part about collaboration, which is once upon a time, people would have felt pressured to stay in a job, to stay in a company that doesn't work for them. But what we're seeing, if we look at the US, and that's only because they have the data, there's the great resignation, which is proving that people no longer want to stay under conditions that don't match who they are as people. And then I think that's where this collaborative part comes, is because once upon a time, you probably would have felt dissatisfied with your job. You wouldn't have admitted it to anybody. It felt like a failure. Now, you might get a call from somebody who, you're based in Munich. Somebody calls you from LA and says, hey, there's a job here. We think it might be for you. And you go, hold on. There are global possibilities. And to Amesh's point, previously we've lived in this silo. And if you look at how people are interacting with each other on a global level, once upon a time, we thought everything was about the West, the West, the West, the West.
Yep.
But what we're understanding is the facts are showing that actually the continent of Africa is going to be the largest source of resource. We focused on China being the largest country that provides all the wealth. But you see, culturally now, people are becoming more aware that, hey, there are cultures here who are community style cultures over individualistic. And it's raising a questioning part. It's raising this part of, do I fit within where I am? And if I don't, does the company need to change, or do I? And if not, how do I find, from a company perspective, how do I find people who match my culture, my values? And as the individual, where do I go? And I don't have to say, I'm based in Munich. I no longer have to say, I need a job in Munich. I can say, well, the global portal is open. I can look for a job in India. I can look for a job in China. I can look for a job anywhere. And I think this kind of collaboration and this kind of opening the doors to these kinds of conversations is happened, I think, as a trigger to the pandemic, where on the one hand, we've become smaller, living in smaller spaces, which means you treasure and you look at how you live. And living, a major part of it is working. As Umesh says, we work 50, 60, however many hours a week. That now has to count for something more than it did before.
Yeah. So, Harita, I want to pick up what Lian just said, and I think that is pretty core to the way we look at building organizations, is talent, credibility, and can that person bring the best which kind of is assumed to be based on certain KRAs. But those KRAs today have to be relooked, right? Because the KRAs earlier were very, very augmented to a business which probably dealt with a set of customers. I know at Sutherland got customers all over the world, and you have cross expectation of customers both wanting you to deliver the same thing but on very different styles, very different place. How do you deal with either needs, collaborative partnerships which come from as requests from partners that you can't say no to?
Sure, and I think, Lian, you brought up a very interesting perspective of culture. And a lot of myths have got broken in the last 2 years after the pandemic. Mm-hmm. And, to your point, Pranav, how do we deal with it? We're a global company. So there were two key myths which I want to talk about. One, I think the minute we shifted to a, totally e-collaboration model, both internally and of course with our customers, because no customers were traveling. What was very key was knowledge management. Mm-hmm. And knowledge management is an age-old science, philosophy, how do you do stuff?
Legacy management.
Yeah. And what I realized was that, all of the tacit knowledge, which, when you're in an office is easy to do, I can walk across to Umesh and ask a question. It was so important now to curate that and create a robust knowledge management system. So, I wouldn't say it's a myth. I think it was a need which emerged, and we set up a knowledge management system called Cerebro, and anybody, anywhere in the world can log into it and look at it. We not only did that, we externalized a lot of the data that our customers would like to see on performance.
Hmm.
So I want to have a look at how Pranav is doing. Is he working, in his 8 hours? And his breaks, etc. We went down to as micro a level as possible, and we built the tools ourselves. So we're really a technology company which facilitates process. And the third myth, I think that broke, and I can speak for Southeast Asia, which I lead for Sutherland, is this whole thing that you can get talent only in the metro cities.
Yeah.
To Leanne's point, Africa is going to be the largest growth in terms of talent. India, Philippines, Malaysia, Vietnam, you name it.
Mhm.
And we are now hiring in tier 2 cities in India. I've just gone live with Bhopal, and which is in the heart of the country.
Okay.
And we're also looking at other tier 2 cities. So I think a lot of broken myths, and all of these need very robust knowledge management, e-collaboration, as well as, of course, cultural alignment, because you lose your people very quickly.
Yeah, I'm going to pick that up, Bharita. You know how people is important to me. I've consistently built teams, people across my journey. Tell me one thing, in the collaborative ecosystem, when you're defining, and while your access is identifying people in tier B and tier C, and also for you, Leanne, that when a first world country hires in the third world country, if I may use that word, the premise of collaboration still has a sense of ambiguity, keeping in mind that skills become far more malleable because they are being taught those skills for their localization. What have been your approach of really including them in the perspective of making them succeed? Because when they succeed, the organization succeeds, and more importantly, the society succeeds. You can always hire people, but if they don't succeed, there is no fun of it. So, has there been has there been a certain approach to that, Harita?
Yes, absolutely. And I'll give you two perspectives again. The internal perspective in Sutherland is, we created a launch vehicle for careers. We call it the launch vehicle for careers. And essentially we said, hey, you can work from anywhere. So we have a platform called Sutherland Anywhere. Today I can decide to work from anywhere. That's a technology platform. It also has collaboration tools built on it. But more importantly, how do you ensure that, Pranav, who's working on X process, has the opportunity to start
Correct.
working on a different process? And that was done mainly through our training team to ensure that we were upskilling, giving people opportunities both from a mentoring, coaching, as well as, ability to move into different programs, and through our internal knowledge portal, as well as our training portal. From an external perspective, I'm also on the board of the Skilling Council for NASSCOM. And I would say from an India perspective, NASSCOM has done an absolutely amazing job in the last couple of years, and we've continued to take that forward. Where we are saying that we will curate content, and we will curate it for some of the, I would say for some of the areas which, let's say, the IT and the IT-enabled services industry is growing in India. And that content will be available to anybody who wants to consume it in the tier 2, tier 3 cities, in colleges, schools, even institutions or companies like ourselves. And people could use that content and get a 101 certification, so to speak, to say, hey, I have a certification on this piece of work. So that's the way we're looking at it, outside in and inside out.
Lovely, lovely.
Can I add a piece here, Pranav, if that's okay?
Please go ahead.
No, because as you were speaking, for us at Benefactum, it's, employer-employee relationship is very symbiotic. But what we also know is due to the way systems work, especially the Western system, we've created a set of benchmarks that only truly apply. And I'm going to take it back for 2 seconds to the history of the corporate world, right? The history of the corporate world was created by the dominant culture for the dominant culture, meaning people of color, especially women, have not been included in terms of skill sets directly in this part of the world. So when you're still looking at a type of language that's agentic, that means by default, just through language alone, you're excluding women. And it's the same thing. So when we'll use emerging markets because it's easiest for now. So when you're taking like a big conglomerate and they go into local emerging markets, a lot of the times, back to your original point, it's imposed upon an imposer. But actually what we try to implement is something, people call it reverse mentoring, but I wouldn't call it that. But we want to know from the new employees, what do they feel they need to succeed? Because in many cases, it isn't about what you have. The question is, do you have the basic and fundamental intelligence to learn what I'm going to give to you? And I think that's what it is, that there's an unlearning from the corporate side to say, it's not that these people are any less intelligent than you believe them to be. It's just that we have had Western training, which means we understand this. But if your training isn't aligned to this, then you're going to have to create a new set of benchmarks to correctly evaluate what I'm doing. There's no point in me having an equities benchmark if I invest in bonds. It's not the same thing. And it's helping them to do that, create the right benchmark to be able to correctly measure. But they also have to be willing to give a little in the learning process in order to make these young people thrive and survive.
No, I think give a little is not the correct word. I think the correct word is trust. I think we need to build consistent trust in building that as an equity, because I think it consistently drives the area of others who are being included. And I won't get into, while your example is so correct about people of color and people getting involved, I don't think their response to understanding or why they do what they do is augmented towards the long vision of the organization. So I think and that's what Harita is saying, that what she's trying to drive, and I so value that, is that the ability to drive that is for Sutherland, but it's also for others as well. And I think that kind of builds in the trust to not only mitigate that you're only working for profit, but you're actually working for the purpose of making a larger impact to society. And I think that critical part is the build of trust and the build of value that you are able to do. Umesh, I want to put your mind on that. When you work with government partners across the world, and I know you come from a background of working with states, how have you seen trust being mitigated in some ways when collaboration was not naturally otherwise than meeting, probably having a dinner together? How has that been augmented differences in different part of the world?
Well, you are dealing with government and you're dealing with states, and the amount of motivation out there is, very subjective. So the question is always how do you align people with the same sense of purpose that you are trying to derive? Mm-hmm. I always put the word belonging or belongify, if that's the right word actually, and everybody has motivation. So you need to have this communication, perceptions broken down, and have a constant dialogue. The endeavor is always to get things moving. Find your internal, if I may use the word, cheerleader, mascot, ambassador, who can push things for you. Make him part of your core function and process. Make him believe in the same vision, because ultimately he or she, your battle is always internal, never external actually, when it comes to project management, whether internally in my own organization or internally in the government organization also. It's always internal actually. Now, we can have all nice communication in English, but at the end of the day, you have to have that kind of relationship, interpersonal skills to break down the perceptual barriers and all kind of barriers which involves in having, getting things forward actually. So there has to be a positive environment despite all the odds against you. Communication is the only way, and it's a constant endeavor. I don't see this as a pure Gantt chart project management, which things will happen in a timeline. It's everything is a moving piece. You have to keep pushing. You have to find the right stakeholders to make it work. And ultimately, at the end of the day, if you have more believers in making it happen, things are much easier.
No, in fact, I'll pick one of my experiences up and the work that we are doing across various parts of state-led decisions. In fact, the ability to dilute state-led decisions, which was earlier going to the top 3 or 4 market leaders, because the RFPs were prepared for those market leaders, not and the companies today realizing or clients today realizing that those post the RFP being won, those companies were buying smaller companies to deliberate. So the premise of partnering really becomes one-dimensional. How can we really build an opportunity where we are able to partner? Because the intent is to really be someone who helps organizations build and create an ecosystem which is healthy, because once you have many organizations, younger, mid and old, they kind of collaborate and make a social impact, and eventually also have people who have choices to work for a 10-member company, a 100-member company, or a 50,000-member company. So that also includes choices, and all of us know about the opportunity today of the gig economy, who's kind of building play which considerably is activating the way choices of professional partnership is in consistent equilibrium. So I think that is a large part of the play, and I thought that is systematic in the way we want to approach things. One last, I'm going to, for the sake of time, I'm going to close this. What is one moment of collaboration that you have felt in your professional life, said that this will stay with me as a moment for a long period of time, and which also inspires me in some ways, and sometimes you want to do it again and again and becomes your vision. So could you share one of those moments, Harita?
Yeah, it's so as I took over to be the country leader for India in January of 2020 for Sutherland.
Yes.
I didn't realize that the pandemic was on its way. And by March 2020, we knew what happened. So one of the things that will always stay with me is that as I was learning the business, I wanted to know exactly how people are feeling during the pandemic. And my communication leader came back and said, hey, on our internal SharePoint site, why don't we have a little link which says Ask Harita?
So cool.
And I sort of said, yeah, sure, go ahead. That actually turned out to be a game changer for us.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, we have over 18,000 people in India. And not only did every other country in Sutherland adopt it, but the questions I started getting on Ask Harita made me, it was completely bottoms up, the communication. And I would have never had so much bottoms up communication because, as leaders, it's always top down.
Yeah. Nice.
And so it made me listen. It made me act for the people, by the people. And I think it showed results. Our employee NPS is at 61, which is, one of the highest, I would say, in the world.
Yeah.
So that will always stay with me, that listen to people bottom up.
Yeah. Perfect. Umesh?
Well, plenty of experiences, I must say, but the most importantly, like Harita rightly said, people start communicating a lot during the times when things are pretty topsy-turvy, and you need to be the listening ears. In my last 1.5 years, since I'm more of a matchmaker, if that's the right word, I put it across, I've been listening to a lot of businesses, small, big and large and unicorns, etc. And they come up with various propositions. Can we do this? Can we do that? What do you think of the market? And while listening to them, and some of the many perceptions have been broken down, some of the interesting collaborations have happened, some of the interesting partnerships have happened, and more importantly, there's a constant relearning. So for me, some of the smaller companies who thought they couldn't grow globally, they were growing pretty fast in this pandemic time because simply because the cost metrics have changed. It's a gig economy, like you rightly said. Their ability to go to market is pretty fast, and that's an amazing experience. I mean, of course, not everybody has a rosy picture, but some of the industry really took off. Some of the industries really took off.
Yeah, Leon?
My one's a little slightly more personal, and when I say slightly more personal, it's still in the professional arena. And mine was, to your point, how do you allow others to thrive? And at the time, I was looking for a partner to help me with communications. And originally you write your business spec, and you go and you say, I want this, and I want this years of experience, etc., etc. But as I was going through the filtering process, there was one profile that stood out. And the company was interested, like me, in gender equality, like me in racial equity, but they had no experience. And I don't know how this company made it through the filter. I followed up with the owner, and she was perfect. And when I say she was perfect, she was perfect. This was the diamond that I was looking for, but I never would have found, she's based in Nigeria, I never would have found her had I just kept that same filter on. But somehow, and if it's serendipity, I don't know what, but the point for me was always challenge your assumptions. When you go in, don't look so much for what you think you need. Look for what's there, the possibilities. And that taught me that collaboration is absolutely global, and you can find what you're looking for, and it doesn't have to be where you think it should be. Challenge. And that for me is always the thing. I think challenge my assumptions. I might think this is perfection, but actually there might just be that perfect person outside. And that's what stayed with me. And she's amazing. And now we get to do so many more things together than just communications. So that was my one.
Yeah. So I'll finish it with one of my stories. And I said, one of my counterparts asked me for why you are so successful with one of the clients, and what takes a 15-year relationship with them count, especially when I'm building boards for them or CEOs for them for a decade and a half. And while I've been told at the board meeting that he helps and so support, so the new CEO asks, so what do you do differently that other people don't? I always say that I never get a job description. The day I get a job description, you're going to box me in identifying a perspective, and I will be just finding the same people that you've been talking to. I think identification is so true. Collaboration comes from within. I think we need to build trust, and we need to make sure our work goes to the people so that society reflects back on it, and we collaborate naturally than anything else. Thank you for taking out time, guys. Love the conversation. Really, really happy to have you here. Thank you, Harita. Thank you, Umesh. Thank you, Lilian.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for taking out time.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you, Liam. Thank you so much.